It is time for the Writer's Block, our weekly look at all things sports. I'm Jenny Carlson here in the studios of the Oklahoman, joined by Cedric Golden from the Austin American-Statesman. Hello, dear friend.
What's up, buddy?
Oh, you know, there are sports, and more sports, and let's get right into this. Our lead segment today, we're going to call it the Shade segment. Come on into the shade, because in the NFL, shade seems to be popular these days. We're going to start with this, Cedric. Daniel Jones, the recently drafted Giants quarterback who had shade thrown all over him over the summer by Baker Mayfield, makes his first start over the weekend. Great debut, a Giants win. Meanwhile, you've got Baker Mayfield and the Browns still struggling offensively. Is this a little bit of karma at work here, Ced?
I don't know if it's karma, Jim, but I'm going to tell you, look, I like Baker Mayfield. He makes our jobs fun. He's good copy. He's from Austin. He's the latest great quarterback from this city. But he spends the offseason ripping into Sam Ehlinger from Texas. And then he says, I can believe Daniel Jones was taking that early. Well, you're speaking on stuff you don't need to speak on. Meanwhile, you're an NFL quarterback, and I know we've talked about this before. When you're running down the field after a touchdown and you're doing the swim move, you don't play a Norman anymore. This is the NFL, and those guys that you're showing up want to take your head off.
Yeah.
And so I think Baker needs to settle into the position of quarterback in the NFL. Don't worry about the shade. Daniel Jones took the high road. He goes, I'm just trying to learn how to play in the NFL. And when his time came, he was ready, Jen.
Yeah.
He was ready. And he's going to have some growing pains, and so is Baker. But the difference is Daniel Jones is acting with a lot more maturity than Baker. I know Baker's the cover boy. He's mowing the yard at Cleveland Stadium on TV, and he's got all the commercials. Good for him. I like him. He's fun to watch, but he needs to stop with the shade. Play football and let the other guys where I'm from, they go, let the other guys live as well.
Yeah, and I think what you say is right about the on-field stuff, because at this point, it looks to me, as I've watched the Browns, they played in that primetime spot this week with their game. They are really struggling to score points with an offense that I think a lot of people felt like was just going to march up and down the field and score touchdowns at will. It looks to me like Baker Mayfield is one of the problems right now. He is, it sort of reminds me of his second year as starter at Oklahoma. They lost a couple games early in non-conference play, lost to Houston, lost to Ohio State. You had Baker Mayfield, especially in that Houston game, just looked like he was really trying to do too much, holding the ball too long and causing issues that way. Maybe instead of taking a short play that might, move you a little closer to a first down, really looking for home runs. And when you've got guys like Odell Beckham, I get the feeling like, hey, we could make a big play at any time, but it really feels like Baker Mayfield needs to find some traction within the offense. Cedric, we're only a couple weeks into this NFL schedule, so I'm not ready to, sound the alarm on Baker Mayfield and the Browns, and I'm not ready to crown the Giants and Daniel Jones fixed either. But I do think as it relates to the Browns, they got a tough schedule coming up, and while they finish a lot easier, you don't want to look down the road too far. Otherwise, you might see the Browns 2-5, 1-6. This is a team that's got some tough games coming up.
I told you before the season, they're still the Browns. Until further notice, they're still the Browns. I don't care what you look like on paper. You still play in the AFC North. You still play with the rough and tumble Baltimore Ravens, the desperate Cincinnati Bengals, and the beyond desperate Pittsburgh Steelers, who are probably the best 0-3 team in the league. So I think that Baker has had some injuries up front on his offensive line. You've got the ego of Odell Beckham. 9 targets for Odell. That's not going to fly, Jen. He's used to 14 or 15, and now his boy Juice Landry is on the other side. Your tight end David Njoku is out. Yeah. So you've had some injuries, and the elephant in the room, Freddie Kitchens, not an NFL head coach. I'm sorry. He's in over his head. He's a glorified offensive coordinator who was Baker's buddy. They moved him up to the head coaching job. And we haven't even talked about Baker blasting Hugh Jackson who's on his way out the door, the former coach. Stuff that a rookie quarterback just shouldn't be doing. So I think that the Cleveland Browns, until further notice, I don't care how talented they are, and they are monstrous on defense, Jen, with Myles Garrett and guys of that ilk. They're really good on defense. But until further notice, they're still the Cleveland Browns. Baker needs to clean up his act, not only on the field but off the field. Let's get to what's important, and that's winning football games. Don't let the other stuff take precedent over what you're paid to do.
Well, and, a lot of shade thrown by Baker over the years. We know that. We said this was the NFL shade segment, so said this might be an all-timer. In Philadelphia, a bad situation, a building fire, an apartment fire. As I understand it, an Eagles fan who also happened to be had some firefighting in his background, helped to save some people out of that building, including some kids that basically get tossed out to him and Cedric. Amid this interview, talking about saving these kids, this Eagles fan throws perhaps the biggest shade I've ever seen at Nelson Aguilar, the Eagles receiver, who's had some bad drops these early games. He says, I'm catching kids, unlike Aguilar. Just had to get that out there. It was Cedric. It was an all-timer for shade.
My man just started throwing babies out the window. We was catching them, unlike Aguilar.
Only in Philadelphia. Only in Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. You're talking about kids being saved, and you had to take time out to stick it in Nelson Aguilar's back. Props to Nelson Aguilar for inviting the guy to a game. He's trying to find him, and he wants to invite him to a game. I think that's the all-time classy move. 90% of the players in the league are blasting this guy on Instagram and Twitter. Nelson Aguilar, who actually had a really good game last week, he caught 2 touchdown passes. I know because I got my butt kicked in my fantasy league, and Aguilar was part of the reason I lost. So I know that Aguilar had a good game. He took the high road. I'm glad the kids are safe. This fan has gone viral. I'm sure he didn't think that was coming, but he's probably going to find himself sitting at a game and cheering on Nelson Aguilar. I think that's called a happy ending.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is funny because everything is good. I mean, everything worked out great. But yeah, you're right, Cedric, what you said about happening in Philly. I mean, the place that boos Santa, and I mean, all of the things that have happened over the years with Philadelphia fans, with Eagles fans, to have this become a moment they're going to be known for forever. And you know what would be great is that while he's there at the game, as you said, with Aguilar's tickets, they should show this guy on the Jumbotron. It would create.
They will. You know they will.
It would be the best moment of all time. It would be so fun. And yeah, I think they will too. I can't wait to see what that scene is like at that Eagles game.